All right, let's dive right into a topic that's, well, let's be honest, it's a little uncomfortable, but absolutely fascinating. We're talking about the dark truth of human nature.
So, let's start with the big one, the question that philosophers have wrestled with for centuries, and hey, maybe it's kept you up at night too. Are people, deep down, actually good? It sounds so simple, right? But believe me, the answer is anything but.
Okay, so first, let's look at the bright side, the optimist view. This is the perspective most of us really want to believe in, isn't it? That comforting hope that, by default, we're all basically good.
The philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau really nailed this idea. He famously said, "Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains." What he was getting at is that we come into this world pure, as good beings. We're born free. But then, society happens. With all its rules, its pressures, its hierarchies, and those are the chains that end up corrupting us. And that just feels right, doesn't it? I mean, we see people being kind all the time. We root for the hero. It's just nice to think that our factory setting is empathy and cooperation. But is that really the full picture?
And this is where the story takes a turn. Because once we leave the world of philosophy and step into the psychology lab, well, we find some pretty disturbing evidence. Evidence that starts to poke some serious holes in that sunny, optimistic view.
Let's start with a huge concept here, obedience to authority. Basically, it's the idea that you or I are much more likely to do something, even if it feels wrong, as long as the person telling us to do it is someone we see as being in charge.
Okay, look at this number, 65%. Just let that sink in for a moment. This comes from the famous Milgram experiment. They brought in totally ordinary people, like your neighbor or your coworker, and had a scientist in a lab coat tell them to deliver increasingly powerful electric shocks to another person. And get this, 65% of them, a full 2/3, went all the way to the maximum voltage, a switch marked as potentially lethal. And why? Simply because an authority figure told them to. The researcher himself, Stanley Milgram, drew this powerful conclusion. He said it wasn't about the kind of person someone is, but the kind of situation they find themselves in. In other words, he realized he hadn't accidentally gathered a room full of evil people. No, it was the situation itself that held all the power. And that idea, that changes everything.
And if you're thinking, okay, but that's just one study, think again. Because then you have the infamous Stanford prison experiment. They took a bunch of normal college kids, flipped a coin, and made half of them guards and the other half prisoners. The transformation was terrifyingly fast. The guards became cruel, authoritarian. The prisoners became passive and showed signs of extreme stress. I mean, it got so toxic so quickly, they had to shut the whole thing down after just 6 days. It was supposed to run for 2 weeks. It just goes to show how quickly a role we're given can completely overwrite who we are.
So, where does all this leave us? It suggests that maybe we've been framing this all wrong. Maybe this isn't a simple story of good people versus evil people. Maybe it's all about the incredible power of the situation.
This really breaks down two totally different ways to see behavior. The dispositional view is our natural default. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and your first thought is, what a bad person. We blame their character. But the situational view, which these experiments scream at us, asks a different question. What if they were in a bad situation? Maybe that driver is rushing to the hospital. It's a massive shift from judging the person to analyzing the context they're in. And here's the absolute heart of it. We love to talk about rooting out the bad apples, but what if the problem isn't the apple? What if the problem is the barrel it's in? A toxic system, a powerful social role, unchecked authority. These things can make perfectly good people do some pretty terrible things.
Now, I know this all sounds kind of bleak, but stick with me, because it's actually the opposite of discouraging. See, understanding this darkness, that's where our power comes from. Awareness is the first step to taming these inner demons.
So, what can we actually do about it? How do we build better barrels? Well, first, we have to be willing to question authority. Don't just follow orders blindly. Ask why. Second, we need to recognize our own biases, because we all have them, especially that tendency to favor our in-group over an out-group. Third, remember to step out of your role. You are an individual first, not just a label. And finally, and this is the big one, embrace personal accountability. Because even in the most intense situations, there is almost always a moment where you still have a choice. And all of this brings us to a final, crucial reality. This whole conversation isn't about slapping a verdict on humanity. It's about getting clear on the choices we all face every single day. Because human nature isn't a verdict.
It's not a fixed stamp that says good or evil. It's a capacity, a potential, the ability to show immense kindness, and the ability to commit terrible cruelty. They both live inside every single one of us.
So the real test isn't what we are fundamentally, but what we choose to do with that potential. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Knowing that you have the capacity for both light and dark, what will you